It's beautiful, it's quiet, and it's safe.
It couldn't have been a better place to grow up, and I think anybody you talk to that grew up here will agree with that.
It has an amazing location. You cannot be closer to downtown, closer to the beach, closer to West Ashley, all in one location. What an amazing history it has. Charles Lindbergh landed his plane here. I literally grew up picking out pottery shards from my backyard. I mean, you can't get that experience everywhere.
You feel like you're at home wherever you are in the terrace. And it's a wonderful place to have children and to live. I hope I live here till I go on to my heavenly home.
I've been here long enough to see changes, but there's certain continuities. There are always kids on the street, walking around. There's always walkers, people who just love to come into the neighborhood to walk here because it's safe, they're not at risk of traffic moving too fast. So it's a very people-friendly place. It's beautiful with the trees and the parklands that we already have. And I think it has that je ne sais quoi. It's a celebration of life, and everybody feels it every day. And we're just happy that we have this chance to live in a place that is so special.
When Bissell Jenkins and the Edisto Realty Company laid out Riverland Terrace, the vision was grand and elegant. Resort-style community with a hotel, yacht club, and winding bridle paths through the trees, far removed from the bustle of downtown Charleston. Then came the stock market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression, and Jenkins' plans were scaled back. The wealthy stayed on the peninsula, and development plans were dashed. Still, Riverland Terrace endured through those early days. The Hardy families that crossed the Wapoo built an eclectic group of homes on rural James Island, and a strong sense of community took root.
I thought I had moved to the ends of the world when I moved here because it was so remote. We had nothing as far as utilities were concerned except electricity. We didn't have running water. We had wells. We didn't have sewage. We had septic tanks. All the streets were dirt, and there was nothing but woods. We could go down Maybank Highway, and there would be deer standing out grazing along the highway. There was nothing. I thought I had moved to the ends of the world because I was a city girl.
My mother did not want to move here because she said, if that bridge breaks down, we've got a problem. To get here, you had to cross over the Wapoo Bridge, which was a drawbridge. It was the only way into Charleston. And so often back then it would get stuck when it was opened. And then you were stuck over here on all the islands.
I wouldn't be happy going anywhere else. It was a safe neighborhood, and everybody knew everybody. When you cooked, they knew what you had in the pot.
I love that Riverland Terrace is not a cookie-cutter neighborhood. I love that it's eclectic, that it has all sorts of different people, all sorts of styles of architecture. It really has a sense of individuality.
My favorite thing about Riverland Terrace is the character. I'm trained as a landscape architect, and so when I was coming through school, there was a real big push on neo-traditional development. They were building new neighborhoods. Daniel Island is supposed to be one of those. And they're modeled after communities like Riverland Terrace. Well, Riverland Terrace developed organically into a traditional neighborhood. And unlike the modern version where you have everything kind of segregated out by, well, that's the section with the single family and that's the section with the duplex, we have it completely mixed up. You'll have a quad next to a house that's sitting on a double lot across the street from a single family that's on an 80-foot wide lot.
I think the combination of having those diverse styles within the same neighborhood makes this neighborhood very iconic and unique, but they all tend to blend in harmoniously. And I think it's because people have taken care to maintain the overall context of the neighborhood and not stray too far from the character that defines the neighborhood. My favorite house is actually the Clark and Menifee house on the water. Clark and Menifee built other buildings in this area, such as the Middleton Inn and the South Carolina Aquarium downtown. The Clark and Menifee house was built by a resident of Riverland Terrace who experienced the Middleton Inn with his wife, and they enjoyed that hotel so much that they decided to replicate that style at the edge of their property on the Stono River. So they hired the architect, Clark and Menifee, to design them a home on that plot of land there. It looks nothing like any other house in the neighborhood. It's an iconic showpiece on the water and also at the end of the street, kind of terminating the view corridor out to the Stono River, and it provides a breath of fresh air for kind of all the typical homes you see around the city.
Another significant Riverland Terrace residence, known for its rich connection to both noble residents and the arts, is Wapu Hall.
It's a beautiful property on 3.5 acres. It has 348 feet of water frontage on the Elliott Cut. The Elliott Cut is interesting within itself because this is one of the narrowest points of the intercoastal waterway in the whole eastern part of the United States. The second owner, who purchased it in 1946, was Prince Pachachin, originally from Russia. He left Russia because of the Bolshevik Revolution. At that time, he fled to Paris, met Shirley, that became his wife. She was a socialite also. She was an actress and performed at the Dock Street Theater in certain performances. They moved to Charleston in 1946.
Every child in the neighborhood on Halloween went to visit the Russian princess because she was very, very generous with her handouts.
And we'd all go to trick-or-treating there. That was the big thing for the neighborhood. And you'd go down this long, winding, dark driveway, which was terrifying. But you get to the door, and the butler or Miss Pucciatine would answer the door, and they'd give you handfuls of candy. And if they ran out of candy, they gave you a quarter. So that was the big deal back then.
We purchased this house in 2002 from Ann Worsham Richardson and her husband. She was a world-renowned artist, is in the South Carolina Hall of Fame. Her pictures are placed in the State House, also in Washington, D.C. This place at one time, when she had it, was a federal wildlife sanctuary where she helped endangered owls and deer and rehabbed them.
They actually had an aviary there, and she would greet school children, and they would take tours and see the birds. And she's a very famous bird artist in South Carolina, and I've got lots of her prints.
There's so much interesting history on the property. When we first bought it, Ann Worsham Richardson had given me a picture of the early 40s of two young kids standing in front of a reflection pond. There was an indentation in the front yard. I dug it up and found the remnants of it and rebuilt it, and today it still exists and is running fine.
The municipal golf course, it was there before I was. It was sold to the city for $5 with a stipulation that it would always be used as a public entity, basically a golf course.
The Edisto Realty Company, led by Bissell Jenkins, donated the land as part of their master plan community for Riverland Terrace. At that time, in the early 1920s and 30s, master plan communities were a brand new thing. They didn't exist, and that's exactly what Riverland Terrace was. And so incorporating a golf course and parks into the neighborhood was all about creating this quality of life and creating a community off the peninsula in Charleston. Golf course construction started in 1928 at a time where the only examples of golf in Charleston were the Country Club of Charleston and Yeamans Hall. Charleston Municipal was designed by a local, J.M. Whitsitt, who was a club champion at Country Club of Charleston. And the golf course, while it was not a Seth Rayner golf course at the time, the only examples of architecture in town were Rayner designs. So if you squinted a little bit, you could always see some of those similarities. Fast forward 90 years, the golf course had not seen any kind of major renovations or any kind of construction, and that's when the Friends of the Muni came along, and we decided to come in and do a major renovation to the golf course and really accentuate that idea of it being in a Seth Rayner, Charles Blair Macdonald style of architecture, which generally is a style of architecture that is just not available to the general public. Most of Rayner's golf courses are private, like the Country Club of Charleston and Yeamans Hall. And so most people are never going to get to experience it. And this was an opportunity to bring that style of architecture, something very unique and very historic, to Charleston at an $18 rate for a local player.
I used to caddy there when I was a kid, and I remember one time I had to be home by a certain time, and I got to Riverland Drive, which is separates 10 green from 11 tee, and I gave the golfer his bag. So my daddy told me I had to be home, and I left him with his bag, and that was kind of ended my caddying career at the golf course.
The reason that I did this golf course design was really, it was a passion play for me. My father, his first job in golf was here at Charleston Municipal. My grandfather caddied here, and I grew up playing the golf course. When we came back to do this renovation, it was about protecting it. And so the idea was to make sure that we were protecting the integrity of the golf course for the next generation and the generations to follow.
What I love most about Riverland Terrace is the grand oak trees that are like guardians to the neighborhood, and they anchor the streets and provide comfortable experience to walk and for kids to play. They kind of make an identity for the neighborhood.
The oak trees in the alley, they're live oaks that were planted by a farmer first who was working on the property when it was still a farm. And then when the farming went off because cotton went out, he was then still in the house, but the new development people who came in 1920, 1925, they planted the alley as it exists now all the way down to Maybank Highway. And it was a beautiful, beautiful part of the neighborhood. We've had to fight for them because, of course, back in the day, there was a movement to cut them all down because the bus was going to be going on this route. And the lady who I had bought her house, she was the leader of a group that marched right down and told those men to go home or they'd smack them. And she did take care, and that led to the work done on the trees every year by the garden club to fertilize them, to trim them, and that's been going on for all these years since.
What makes the live oak trees successful is that they've been nurtured over time, and I feel like future generations and newcomers to the neighborhood need to have that history and understanding to cherish and develop and even create more live oak trees in the neighborhood that will enhance the neighborhood now and also grow over time and help it evolve for future generations.
I lived on Wapu Drive for a while. Yes, it's beautiful. And one of the memories I have is there's a day in November when the trees line up and go to the river, and then the sun sets right down on the alley. So you see the light coming straight down the roadway. You can't see anything because it's right in your face, but it lights the trees up in such a way, magical, very beautiful.
At the start of the Civil War, it became evident that control of the western regions of James Island and the Stono River would be an important element in the defense of Charleston. In 1862, the first section of a large earthwork fort was constructed on James Island at the edge of what is now the Riverland Terrace community. The fort's armament included 20 guns of various calibers and was designed to function as both a land and water battery. The fort was abandoned after the war and later became a playground for generations of Riverland Terrace children.
One of my best friends, Holly Tillman, lived on Aubrey Drive. I lived on Tynes Avenue. When we wanted to walk to meet each other, lo and behold, we would meet at Fort Pemberton. In the summer, we would eat loquats, we would explore. It really was a fun place to be a kid.
Having Fort Pemberton right behind our house, we had access to it growing up. The earthen mounds were still in place at Fort Pemberton, and they were our caves. We had rope swings back there, and when we got a little older, we'd go swimming off of my friend's dock. So it was just a perfect place to grow up.
The historical significance of Fort Pemberton really goes back to the Revolutionary War. When the British invaded Charleston, they landed on Seabrook. They marched across Johns Island. They set up on Fenwick Plantation. British came across the Stono River and they landed at Perrineau's Landing, and they set up camp here. They went down what was then called King's Highway to capture Fort Johnson, and then they went up King's Highway and they built a bridge over the Wapoo Creek. So the Confederates said, we don't want that to happen, and they built a whole line of defenses. And Fort Pemberton was set up as both a land and sea fort, and it controlled the water passages, and it was able, unlike a lot of the other fortifications, it had guns that faced inland as well. It was there because they wanted to prevent the Union Army from coming across and going down the Wapoo Creek and basically landing in downtown Charleston on the Ashley Riverside. And so that forced the Union Army to then go down to Folly and then over through attacking that way. It was successful in that it prevented any access. The fort exists because they had free labor to build it, and they didn't have free labor to tear it down. So during the recovery period after the Civil War, they came through and just farmed around it. They went from farming cotton to truck farming. So that's what the community was when they started cutting it up into the neighborhoods initially. The fact it was not able to be knocked down is the only reason that we don't have houses there right now. The plans for Fort Pemberton were protecting the space for public, so it's not going to be developed. There's a restroom and a picnic shelter and some level of historic interpretation that'll take place inside the fort. And then there's the big open lawn on the outside, and then there's access to the water. So there'll be docks where you can fish or launch a kayak or just watch some of the best sunsets in the world. It's hard to find that much space in a community anymore, and certainly challenging to find essentially undeveloped land like that in an area that's been seeing development for over 100 years. It's really, it was a unique opportunity for the city to protect it and to be able to just go walk in the trees. The Japanese term is tree bathing. I don't know how to say that in Japanese, but just being out there and hearing the wind blow. And it's one thing, when you're at your house but you're surrounded by it, but you can get in here and you go down in the old ditch and you're walking around and you can't see anything other than trees. And that's going to be right here in the neighborhood.
Mr. Rossler was one of the first people to build a house in the neighborhood. He fell in love with windmills during the war over in Europe. So when he came home from the war, he wanted to build a windmill. He built it on his own, but some say that he got the plans from Popular Mechanics, and there's also an account that he just made up the plans on his own. But it is a two-story Dutch-style windmill that he started in the early 30s. He did live on the Wapoo Cut, and he originally used it to pump water for his property. They had family gatherings, and they had them at the windmill in his yard, and they would take family photos on the deck that was around the windmill. The windmill sits on the Wapoo Cut at statute mile marker 470. And a friend of mine that is actually sails the cut says it has been a marker there all these years, even when it sat on Mr. Rossler's property. They use it as a marker.
The windmill was going to be torn down because the new people had bought the property and they wanted to build a house where the windmill was. And the windmill was a kind of place where people knew where they were on the boats. So we wanted to keep it on the waterfront. And the city said we could move it down to the fire station. And that was a big undertaking.
The ladies in the garden club raised over $10,000 to have a new foundation built and have it moved around the corner.
They had to take the roof off the windmill, and then they laid the windmill down on a flatbed. They had to take the wires down, electrical wires, to get round the corner. And we already had the foundation built for it. And then they had to have a crane come and lift it up and put it on the foundation, and then put the roof back on it. So it was a big undertaking, but we enjoyed doing all of it.
My parents are Jack and Mary Morris. Jack Morris opened the little Texaco service station on the corner of Plymouth and Wapoo Drive in 1948.
Little League baseball and football was played up at the Riverland Terrace 1 through 12 school at the time. And after the games, you either jumped in some parent's car and rode up to the gas station, or you rode your bicycle up there, and Jack would give us a Coke and a pack of crackers for 20 cents or whatever we had, or if we didn't have any money, he'd hold it over until next week when we came back again. It was a sad day in the neighborhood when Jack closed his gas station down.
They sold the property to Charleston Postcard Company. It was the Riggs and the McLemores, and they used that as a base for their business.
Beta Riggs and I owned the postcard company, and it was in our garages at first. And then we moved to Jack Morris's filling station when he sold it. And we added on souvenirs and had a showroom for people to come to see what we had.
The Ram Room was very famous for their hot dog chili. Everybody went to the Ram Room. Family won't give up the recipe for the chili yet, but people still talk about it.
I work at Terrace Oaks Antique Mall, and I work there probably because my daughter owns it, but we've always been in the antique business ever since she finished college, and I love it.
There definitely was a big change in Riverland Terrace in the mid-90s, mid to late 90s. There had been a little red and white shop, the Dosher's store at the corner. And then suddenly, oh my goodness, it's going to be turned into this whole big shopping center. So not only is it just going to have the Dosher's and the Western Auto, now it has a big movie theater and they're putting up big palmetto trees. It looked very Hollywood, like it's a very stylized sort of design. We have so many good community neighbors, so many places to eat, to have fun, to enjoy yourself, to exercise. It's a great place for that.
You better buy now because the houses are going up.
I hope that the future generations will bring exciting new changes and bring their own unique perspective, but I also want them to keep a sense of the history and remember the past, because I think that's very important in going forward, that we never lose sense of our past.
Keep the beautiful trees on Wapoo. Don't let them cut those trees down because they've been there forever. And just keep those trees and to love your neighbor. That would be my message.
Please keep enjoying it and appreciating it. The oak trees, the beauty, the garden club, it's all so significant in keeping the same spirit of the terrace and the people who've been there for 100 years.
They need to understand that history to be able to cherish it and to also maintain the character-defining aspects of the neighborhood in the future and become good stewards for the neighborhood.
Keep us like we are. Don't change anything. It's just great the way it is.
I think they need to have a sense that they've entered a very special kind of natural environment, and it's like an old-growth forest. There are people living in small houses, there are elderly people living in half houses, there are big houses on the river, and then there are small houses, and we live together as a diverse community, and that diversity is what keeps us, I think, lively and interesting. And I think the idea of an old-growth forest is there's room for everybody. And so I would hope that they would feel like they're coming under the canopy of a beautiful forest called Riverland Terrace.
My favorite thing about Riverland Terrace is that it's super bikeable. It's a very big place, but feels small when you're biking.
The thing I love most about Riverland Terrace is the community here. There's a community garden at Medway Park, and just seeing the people from the neighborhood at the Terrace Theater and the restaurants there. And Halloween, when everyone comes together, it's just been a beautiful way to grow up.
Something that I love about this neighborhood is how the golf course is right here at the municipal golf course. I love playing golf, so that's really cool. And the fishing here is really good. There's a lot of good fishing spots, and I catch redfish and black trout.
Something I love about Riverland Terrace is how you have so much freedom. You can go wherever you want, whether it's a golf course or eating at restaurants or going to the movies. You can bike anywhere, and there's a gas station near us, so you can just go there whenever you want.
My favorite thing about Riverland Terrace is just being able to bike around, and I really like that there's so many places you can bike, whether that's the movie theater, the park, restaurants, and I just really love being able to bike all these places.
The reason I love Riverland Terrace is because there's so many fun activities to do, and one of my favorites is personally going and fishing the golf course, or even just playing golf at the golf course. And I really also enjoy just biking around the neighborhood, going to see friends, and just doing good things like that.
And what I love about Riverland Terrace is that there's so many perks to take advantage of. Like I get my hair done at the bodega down the street, or going to grab a bite of dinner with my mom at one of our local restaurants, or even getting my nails done. And I also love to just bike around or walk my dog to see the sunset from one of our many amazing vantage points. And I also just love discovering all the little nooks and crannies of our big neighborhood.
I love Riverland Terrace because of all the things you can do. You can bike, walk, go to restaurants, see the cool sights, all those things. You can take your boat out. I love growing up in Riverland Terrace.